What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and I want to talk about a team that I'm very worried about this season, and that's the Dallas Mavericks. Now, a lot of people think, just because Luka Doncic is on the roster that this team is going to be a finals contending team, which is probably true. I mean, Luka's a superstar player. He's a perennial guy that is going to be one of the best to do it in the NBA in years to come, and I really don't see anybody passing him or him dropping off significantly enough for it to not be like a Giannis or a Jokic or a Joel Embiid situation where, like, as long as that guy's on your team, you're going to be good. But I don't think the Mavericks will just be able to come out here and play like they did last year and repeat the success they had. Now, you've got to take into account, last year, everything pretty much went perfect for them. They played amazing in that Phoenix Suns series. They had a really, really good Game 7, obviously. They blow the Suns out of the water, and Luka looks like an MVP at that point. And they didn't play bad by any means against the Warriors. It was just a case of, Luka was really good. The Mavericks were good, but the Warriors were amazing in that playoff run. And they had opportunities in that playoff series. The Warriors had moments where they couldn't hit shots. They just couldn't get anything going offensively. And a lot of times, the Mavericks really struggled to, control that and to take advantage of those moments where Steph Curry misses shots, which is something you have to take advantage of if you're playing him in a playoff series, because we all know he doesn't really do that very often. But at the end of the day, the Mavericks struggled to take advantage of that. They won a few games, but the Warriors were just a better team overall. So I'm not going to hold that against the Mavericks. They played tough in that series, but I think the main thing the Mavericks needed, and it really showed when Luka wasn't able to be on the court, when Luka was not able to be that guy out there on the court, the Mavericks need another scorer. They need that guy that can take the ball and he can put it in the basket, and he can do it efficiently, or almost as close to as efficiently as Luka could. And that's something that the Mavericks have needed for a long time, and I feel like it's a narrative that, so many people have died on that hill saying that that's what the Mavericks need to succeed. And unfortunately for Mavericks fans, and I mean, I'm not a fan of the Mavericks, but I appreciate them. I like watching Luka play. He's a very entertaining guy. He's one of the best in the NBA. They did not improve this team enough, in my opinion, or fill the holes that they needed to fill enough, in my opinion, to make this team a contender or give them an opportunity to get back to where they were at last year and maybe win it this time. At the end of the day, losing Jalen Brunson is a much bigger hit than a lot of people take into account, because if you look up Jalen Brunson, that guy was running the offense when Luka was not. He had a very good year last year, finished with 16 points per game, shot 50% from the field, 37% from three, only about 4 rebounds. I mean, he's a smaller guard, but 5 assists, about a steal a game. I mean, this guy was running the Mavericks offense. When Luka was injured or when Luka needed a rest for a few minutes, Jalen Brunson was taking over. And we know as he's grown throughout his career, he went from a 9 points per game guy down a little bit in his second year with Luka taking over the offense. And now he really found his role in that Dallas offense. He really became a guy that a lot of NBA teams would value as a person to have on their roster, and that only accelerated even farther if you look at his points per game in the playoffs. The guy was averaging 22 points per game, 4 assists, and about a steal per game in the playoffs. I mean, that is just very impressive, and he was shooting efficiently too, 50% from the field, about 35% from three, so not the greatest, but 80% from the line. Just a good overall performance by Jalen Brunson, especially in the playoffs where, defense gets tougher, creating shots gets tougher because you're playing against the best teams of the NBA, and Jalen Brunson really took advantage of that spotlight, and he shined through, and the Mavericks let him go. They didn't even get a trade for him. They didn't sign and trade him. They didn't get anything in return for their second best player. All they did was replace him essentially with Spencer Dinwiddie, who is just a worse version of Jalen Brunson. Now, if you look at Spencer Dinwiddie, he's had good years in the past of his career. He really started out as a second-round pick He struggled to get going early in his career, but he found his footing in Brooklyn there for a little bit, and he took advantage of getting a good role on bad teams. And last year he finished or got traded from Washington, came to Dallas for about seven starts at the end of the season, 23 total games, averaged about 16 points per game and a good amount, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, just a good overall showing for him. But once he got into the playoffs, that is where it all pretty much changed. I mean, 14 points per game isn't terrible. He shot 82% from the free throw line. He got about 2 rebounds, 4 assists, maybe a steal a game if you're lucky, but 41% from the field, and he did shoot also 41% from 3. But as we all know, he wasn't very good at all up until that Game 7 of the Sun series, and going forward, he was okay in the Warriors series. The guy was struggling offensively to get any type of consistency on the floor, and I think the Mavericks really, really benefited from having a secondary ball handler like Jalen Brunson, who could take the offense, who could really improve the offensive efficiency when Luka Doncic wasn't playing, or allow Luka to be an off-ball guy, a guy that can move around and get open from 3 or drive to the basket. Just a lot of versatility that they were offered by having Jalen Brunson, and it's kind of disappointing, in my opinion, that they let him walk, because he was a very, very good NBA player for the Mavericks. And who did they replace him with? Spencer Dinwiddie is going to be the second best guy offensively, you have to imagine. Maybe Tim Hardaway Jr. takes another leap, but we've seen him steadily get better. And at the age of 30, I would not want to rely on a good starter, a perennial role player to take a leap to get me into the playoffs. I mean, they've got Josh Green, who has showed promise. Maxi Kleber is a good stretch 4, but he's not going to provide you with anything special there. The same as Davis Bertans. Both of them are rather poor defensively and rebounding-wise, but they provide you that edge offensively, which is, I guess, a kind of one of those things you have to balance, and you kind of have to be like, well, do I want to go this far this direction, or do I want to get better this direction? It's just one of those things you have to take it and leave it. And the biggest improvement they made this season, or this offseason, was at the center position, which is definitely somewhere they needed improvement at. I mean, Dwight Powell has been very good for the Mavericks across the last few seasons, and I mean, I know Mavericks fans love him. You know, he's had his moments where he's looked bad, but overall he's been at worst a starting and an NBA center. He's never been anything more than that. He's been just a good NBA center, and having him on the roster is a good thing. But now signing JaVale McGee and trading for Christian Wood, you bring him that opportunity to come off the bench, and you provide your team with a lot better depth, considering Christian Wood is likely going to come off the bench if he doesn't start at that 4 position, which I doubt he will. I think it's going to be like a combination of Luka, Hardaway, Dinwiddie, Kleber, and probably McGee starting, because just McGee has that experience and he has proven himself as a good veteran center. But at the end of the day, Christian Wood is an amazing option, and he's a guy that has not really gotten as good as people expected him to be. I remember when he was on the Bucks, he was leaving our team, and a lot of teams were going after him. The Pistons ended up signing him to a pretty large contract for a guy that had never really proven himself, but he had showed all the potential in the world, and he went out there and he did good for Detroit. He did good. I mean, not as good as they expected, though. Went to Houston, did good for the Rockets, but just not nearly as good as expected. And now he's in Dallas, where the pressure is going to be a lot greater. This is a team that expects to compete, and losing or having a bad season is a very, very bad thing for the Dallas Mavericks. And if Christian Wood comes out here and he puts out a dud of a season, or doesn't do as good as he's expected to when they traded for him, it's going to be a very, very tough season for Christian Wood. This Mavericks team just does not have that second guy that I can trust to take over the game. And I do think Luka's good enough to win you some games, obviously. There's some games where your team's going to be doing bad, and Luka just does amazing, and he's that guy. He's going to be good enough to win you games no matter how the rest of the team plays. But at the end of the day, you're not going to want to rely on one player going into the playoffs. We've seen that time and time again. It never works in the playoffs. You always have to at least have 1 or 2 more guys that can step up when the time is needed. And at the end of the day, Luka Doncic is going to eventually need some help in Dallas. We'll have to see how the season starts out for them. We've only got about 2 to 3 more weeks before the season starts, which I'm very, very excited for. But unfortunately, we have to wait still And we'll just have to see what happens for the Mavericks. And it's going to be even more difficult considering how good the Western Conference is. You know, there's not a lot of space for error in the NBA today. And that's something that a lot of teams really struggle on, especially when they struggle to build around their superstar player. How many times have we seen a guy that is a perennial all-star that is probably a MVP candidate? A lot of people are predicting Luka to win MVP this year. That's not my prediction just yet. I don't want to give out my predictions too early now. I want to see a little bit into this season. I don't want to spoil it for you all, but I just don't see this team having as much success as they did last year. And if you're a Mavericks fan, I don't want you to take this as a toxic take. I want you to take this as a constructive criticism. I do think this team is going to be good. They've got depth. They've got the role players that you would really like to have on a contending team. I mean, I would love if the Bucks could have a guy like Tim Hardaway Jr., like Reggie Bullock, like Spencer Dinwiddie coming off the bench, Maxi Kleber, Dwight Powell. All of those guys are very good role players, and I just kind of struggle to see how this team is going to respond come playoff time, especially losing Jalen Brunson in the free agency pool without getting anything in return. I think that's going to be a big hit to this offense, and they're going to have to, it's probably going to be a difficult start to the season. They're going to have to improve. They're going to have to work to get better over the season because it's going to be a bit of a different offensive system with Jalen Brunson out of Dallas now. Obviously, he's in New York. And with the difficult Western Conference, I just don't know how far this team can make it, but I do think they're going to be a very good team. So I want to get that point across because I don't want to act like they're going to be terrible. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to say that they're going to be different than last year, obviously missing Jalen Brunson. And if you do enjoy this content, I thank you all for joining me. Please hit the like button and subscribe and turn on post notifications so you never miss a video. All of that, I know it's completely voluntary. I appreciate so much when you guys do it. It helps me out. And it helps you to see my videos and continue to see them in the future if you do enjoy this type of content. I thank you all for joining me along this journey, and I hope to see you guys next time. Comment down below your predictions for the Mavericks this regular season. Do you think they're going to make it back to the Western Conference Finals, or are they going to fizzle out just a little bit earlier than that? I think my final prediction would probably be second round or bust for the Mavericks, but maybe they shock the world just like they did last year. Thank you all for watching this one. Catch you guys next time. Peace.